Imagine one day you woke up and you were small. Not short, but small. Like really, really small. Now imagine you're teeny tiny and inside a beautiful forest. Sounds like you've just been hurled into the beginning of a fun and colorful fairy tale. Well, you'd be wrong. Not about the colorful part. No, it's plenty colorful, but this is no fairy tale. And it's not fun. It's evil, bloody, chaotic, and morbid. This is the story of Beautiful Darkness, a 2009 graphic novel by, and with its colorful children's book art style coupled with its gruesome and grotesque nature, Beautiful Darkness gives a sense of unease when looking at the horrific situation these characters are put through. But as awful as the situation is, whether it makes you feel uncomfortable or downright queasy, the story is just so good you just can't help but continuing on, even though you know the next page holds a gruesome fate for our little characters. This graphic novel shows us what happens when you take a traditional fairy tale and remove its safe, fun, whimsical, Disney-like core and replace it with something more sinister and realistic. Oh, and did I mention there's a full-size dead child just hanging around in the background for most of the story? Maybe even more surprising than that, the child has nothing to do with the plot of this story. Or just maybe it does. Stay tuned to find out. Our story starts with Aurora, Prince Hector, and Plim enjoying some cake and hot chocolate in a cozy little den when all of a sudden their ceiling begins to drip pink sludge down upon them. It looks like their shelter is beginning to collapse, so they make their way for an exit. They make their way for the exit, and when they do, they find that it's raining outside. Once out of the shelter, we find that they've been living in a deceased young child. Not only that, but there are more people living inside this young girl. It's the next day, and Aurora happens upon a mysterious woman who's found food. Aurora tries explaining her situation and how she's hungry, but the mysterious woman really doesn't care, taking only what she needs and leaving the rest for Aurora. Aurora starts dividing up the food amongst her people when she notices off in the distance Prince Hector sitting and watching her. She tells him that she was worried about him and wondered what happened after the rain pour, but Hector doesn't really seem to notice. Clearly he's too into himself to care what anyone else's feelings are. The conversation is cut short when Aurora notices a commotion and goes to investigate. It's here we meet the gem of a human being, Zelly, dramatically crying out she's been injured by a ferocious bug. Aurora realizes it's only a harmless beetle and moves the bug along. Zelly dramatically cries out that she can't move, so Aurora finds a regular-sized school book with the name Aurora written on it and uses it to shelter Zelly. One of Zelly's friends asks, "Who's Aurora?" To which Aurora replies, "I am," and they all just kind of leave it at that. One night while everyone's asleep, a cat snatches one of the little people out of their beds. It's a horrifying scene where no one can do anything about it, just huddle in fear as they hear one of their friends screaming and being carried off, until the cat's jaws finally silence the scream. The next day everyone goes off on their own little adventures. Some of the little people try making rope with the dead child's hair, but one little girl who happens to be a bit bigger in size and with a feral look in her eye tries her hardest to keep the others from taking the hair. A quiet girl named Timothy, roaming the forest away from everyone, comes across a baby all alone and takes care of it, with its mother most likely being the victim of the cat attack. We also see on one side of the corpse of the dead child that maggots are starting to form in a pile. 3 girls, 2 seemingly regular-sized girls, and 1 large-stature girl play in the maggots. They talk about how hungry they are, with one girl saying, "At least we're not like that pig," as she points to a feral-looking child that's resting by the corpse's head, eating maggots. The biggest stature girl keeps complaining of hunger and decides to eat one of the smaller girls whole. At first, the one remaining girl seems horrified at what happened until the biggest one says she looks pregnant and to call her mama. The smaller girl fills the bigger girl's belly and giggles. "I can feel the baby moving," she says. Aurora, seeming to be the leader, focuses on making sure everyone has what they need, while also befriending a mouse who helps her gather what little food they can. 3 ballerina triplets are climbing a tree when the one highest up yells for the other 2 to stop copying her. The 2 head back down the tree saying it was such a good idea. And what might that idea be, I can hear you asking? Well, the little ballerina climbs to a bird nest filled with baby chicks. The triplet, pretending to be a baby chick so she can get fed, opens her mouth to receive food from the mom, and as she does, the mama bird shoves her beak down the girl's mouth, dislocating her jaw and making her mouth and throat just a bloody, stretched mess. The 2 remaining triplets wander off saying, "I guess it wasn't such a good idea after all," and begin to bicker about copying each other. Clearly they have no concern about their sister's unfortunate circumstance. As the day turns to night, the injured triplet wanders through the forest alone, gurgling and moaning in pain, never to be seen again. A boy playing with a ladybug accidentally snaps its leg off. Not seeming to care, he chases the poor bug, demanding its other limbs. We then see Aurora introduce herself to Timothy and befriends the lone girl. Cutting back to the boy and the ladybug, we see he and his friends have corralled a few other bugs and have been ripping their poor little legs off. A girl asks why they are doing that, and the boy says, "We're teaching them tricks." The girl asks why, and the boy, seeming puzzled, just shouts, "Hey, let's go look for pebbles." We are starting to see that there's very little empathy amongst these children. Harming animals for fun is just as simple as walking or breathing for them. It's also unsettling just to see them torture these poor creatures with the dead girl's corpse just right off in the distance covered with flies. The imagery of this book is just so morbid and so captivating at the same time. We see a girl with a seriously swollen hand who says she scratched it on a leaf, indicating she's touched poison ivy and it affects her tiny body much worse than normal. We'll come back to her later. Two children check a hole where their friend made shelter, but the hole has since been flooded and they find their friend's corpse in the mud. Doesn't really seem to bother them though. One of the ballerinas asks if she can go fishing with some children. They say sure, go farther down the pond as this is their spot. The little ballerina takes off, and as she does, the second ballerina sister comes along and asks the kids the same thing. The kids, thinking it's the same girl, rush off and say she's weird, causing the two sisters to bicker once again about who's copying who. Aurora, who's been gathering food for everyone, runs into Prince Hector, who's supposed to be hunting for food, but if I had to guess, he's just been goofing off. Hector charms Aurora with some sweet words and then puts on his brave pants to go trek the thick grass, saying that there's a shortcut. Only after 30 seconds of whacking at the tall grass, he claims he has a blister and he needs to take a break. Aurora finds Plim and offers him some berries, but the faithful good sidekick says no thank you, save them for someone who actually needs them. Aurora praises him for how good a person he is, and Plim just gives a sinister, mysterious look. We get a random moment of the feral child now burrowing her way into the dead girl's skull, which is now mostly rotted and maggot infested. Aurora's next stop is to check on Zelly, who's being fitted for a flowing white dress. Aurora comments how it looks like a wedding gown, and Zelly coldly replies that she hadn't noticed, but how could anyone notice anything in this dark shelter? Aurora, clearly being the fairest of them all, kindly responds that she'll make windows for Zelly tomorrow, and Zelly, being her usual charming self, just says, "Can't you do it sooner?" As Aurora leaves, Zelly and her friends begin to laugh at her for being blind to what's going on. Yeah, if you can't tell, Zelly's going to become much more of a problem as the story goes on. We cut to Plim coming across the girl who scratched herself on poison oak, but now her symptoms are worse, spreading all the way up her arm now. Plim, pretending to be a nice guy, says he'll guard her food rations so no one steals them. She thanks him, and as Plim walks out of her sight, he eats her food. Even Plim, the guy with an image that just screams, "I am 100% a faithful sidekick," is not so pure-hearted in the story. The kids that went collecting pebbles have now arranged them in some symmetrical, ceremonious way and exclaim that now they need buttons. Next we find one of the ballerina girls dancing along a line of ants until they decide to bite and drag the little girl back into their anthill. While this is going on, Aurora and her mouse friend bathe in a shallow puddle when a giant passes through. Giant to them, average size to us I'd imagine. Cutting back to Plim, we see he has someone doing all his work for him and even admiring how cool Plim is. Just then a wasp lands on Plim's back as he freezes in terror. The boy decides to save Plim by luring the wasp away at the cost of his own life. This doesn't seem to bother Plim though, as he just finds the next person to do all the work for him. One child is flying a kite when the little ballerina asks if she can have a turn. As the ballerina grabs hold of the kite, a huge gust of wind blows her away with a child on the ground yelling for her kite back. The little ballerina yells back, "No take-backs," thus ending the Ballerina Triplets. Aurora talks with the girl with poison oak, and it appears her situation is looking pretty brutal at this point. They're having a casual conversation while Aurora sets up her home for her and Prince Hector, when all of a sudden, Aurora spots a fly that she doesn't like, and she doesn't know why. She runs off crying, and as she does, we see the corpse of the dead girl almost completely covered in flies. The next scene shows a beautiful fall day, with the dead girl alive now, and laying in the forest. It's a beautiful and peaceful scene, which I think was quite needed after the dark imagery we've witnessed and it was all a nightmare the feral child was having while sleeping inside the dead girl's skull. This book definitely doesn't want us getting too comfortable. It wants to keep us uncomfortable. We get a little glimpse at the little people living their lives, Plim bullying a kid out of his beetle helmet, the giant girl getting stuck in a shelter for 6 days, possibly dead at this point. Aurora comes across Jane, who's wrestling with a robin and is able to pin it down. She orders Aurora to clip its wings so it can't fly, and says that once the bird tires itself out, she'll train it. Aurora, saddened, knows that Jane will be leaving the little community, but Jane reassures her that the others are lucky to have her looking out for them. Aurora starts making an invitation and invites everyone to a party she's going to have for her friends and the creatures of the forest. At first, some of the people are trying to bring an apple for Aurora's party, showing their intent on coming to the party, but Plim comes along and says that Zelly needs help with her dress and that it'll only take a few minutes. Timothy, along with her baby, are heading to the party when Zelly and her friends stop her and begin making fun of the way she's dressed, saying that Timothy looks like a beggar and she should be embarrassed to go to the party looking like that. So I think Timothy is my favorite character in the book and Zelly is my least favorite, so let's see how this meetup's going to turn out. Zelly grabs Timothy and starts brushing her hair to the point of ripping it out while Zelly's friends find the baby and ask if they can have it. Zelly says yes to straight up giving someone else's baby away. Timothy tries to get away when Zelly pulls back Timothy's hair to reveal she only has one eye. This revelation disgusts Zelly and friends and breaks Timothy's self-esteem down to nothing. She says she doesn't deserve to live, and Zelly agrees and says to climb in a pencil case and they'll have a fake funeral for her. The broken Timothy agrees and they bury her alive, and it's the last we see of poor sweet Timothy. Zelly and co, basically done with their harassment, walk off, leaving the baby behind to die. It's time for the party and only 2 people show up, with the rest of the guests being the forest creatures. Aurora is visibly disappointed that no one has shown up, but holds out hope that people will show up any second. Unfortunately, trying to keep a group of wild animals to sit still is next to impossible as they all start making a mess of the party. Eating the food, and a bird actually takes off with one of the 2 little people. Aurora is feeling pretty low at this point, and it's hard to think that things can get any worse for her, but this story, like lime in a wound, only knows how to make things worse. The next day, Aurora sees Zelly, who asks how the party's going. A distraught Aurora chokes out that the party was yesterday. Zelly, knowing this, deceptively says that Aurora's instructions weren't clear enough. Aurora says that the animals acted like beasts and destroyed her party. She says that no one showed up, not even Timothy or Hector. More on him very, very soon. Zelly says that Hector probably just misunderstood the instructions, also that she'll go talk to him for Aurora. This calms Aurora and she begins to wander a little through the forest. She comes across some kids happily running somewhere and she happily decides to follow to see what all the fuss is, only to find out that Zelly and Prince Hector have now planned an entire wedding with everyone attending and knowing of the ceremony except for Aurora. Aurora, feeling betrayed by everyone, but most of all Hector, goes off to be alone. She's just about at her lowest point. Some kids from the ceremony find Aurora and bring her mouse friend we've seen throughout this book. The mouse is tied up and gagged as the kids egg on Aurora to get even with the mouse. Now, I've looked over this book multiple times, and as I see it, the mouse is the only one at the party that did not ruin the party. If anything, it ran away from all the commotion. But this might be why the mouse looks so confused when an enraged Aurora just can't take it anymore, begins berating the mouse and gouging its eyes out. It's super sad and super dark. The mouse, now blinded, runs until it collapses from exhaustion, in which the kids catch up to it and kill it. The children eat the mouse and go to find Zelly, with one claiming he saved the heart for Zelly. We then see Aurora begin to eat the scraps left behind by the other children. Possibly some time has passed, but we see Zelly, her minions, and Prince Hector hanging out by a pond. Like any monarchy, Zelly and Hector lays about while everyone works to make it the perfect setting for them. Zelly's ribbon falls into the water and she orders Hector into the pond to fetch it. Hector makes a raft with the leaf, and just as it seems as he's gotten the ribbon, something big swallows him up whole. The servants at the shore are ordered to pull the thread that was Hector's lifeline, and when they do, out from the pond pops a giant toad, which vomits up the remains of Hector. Zelly, the champion of the people, just asks, "Did he at least get my ribbon?" Seriously, this girl just oozes entitled royalty aura. She orders Plim to retrieve a pencil case, which Plim says he emptied, and besides some scratch marks on the inside, it's just like new. Poor sweet Timothy, she did not deserve that. Zelly then pretends to mourn the tragic loss of her prince, because again, people are just objects, this is all a game to her, and from afar we can see Aurora watching all this happen. Her life gone now, she's now just an outcast watching her former friends live this awful lie of a life. Aurora, deciding there's nothing left for her in this part of the forest, decides to venture out and make a new life. She treks for what could be a couple days when she happens upon a giant cabin, and tied to a tiny post of that cabin is a familiar-looking robin. We now see what Jane has been doing all this time. She asks Aurora what she's doing there, and Aurora quietly replies she doesn't want to live with the others anymore. Jane says Aurora can stay the night, but to not make a sound since the home is actually occupied by the giant, a big lumberjack-looking man with fairly realistic human features. It looks like months have passed by, and it's now the dead of winter, with white snow blanketing the forest. Jane returns from somewhere, and we see that her and Aurora have made a comfortable living arrangement for both of them. Aurora has made them a nice dinner, but Jane scolds her for getting ingredients from the giant's part of the cabin. Jane continues to tell Aurora that he's dangerous and that he smells bad. Later on that night, Aurora sneaks up on the giant while he sleeps and cuts off a tiny lock of hair from his head. She explains that she likes the smell and that although it is strong, it's sweet too, like honey. Some time passes and we see the feral child shivering and trudging through the snow back to the dead girl's skull. We then see drops of blood and see the giant skinning a rabbit for supper. Aurora comes running into the den and tells Jane she sees something. They both go out and instantly realize it's Zelly and her minions. Jane, not wanting to give up her place or be spotted by the giant, heads towards them to try to drive them away. Aurora chases after Jane but can't keep up. Eventually she runs into Zelly and Co. while Zelly is now riding the robin. Aurora asks what happened to Jane, but they all play dumb and don't give her an answer. Aurora knows what happened though, and once again is heartbroken. Zelly and Co. overtake Aurora's home and tell Aurora that she needs to address Zelly as princess now. Aurora warns them about the giant, but Zelly seems more pleased, saying that this place is perfect with her very own giant. It's nighttime and Princess Zelly and Co. have set up shop, making themselves dinner, but saving nothing for Aurora. They tell Aurora she better do what she's told if she wants to continue to stay with them. Aurora tells Plim of a secret hiding spot that is much nicer and that she wants to share only with him. She'll even agree to become his personal servant. Aurora asks Plim to keep the secret spot a secret. Plim promises, but of course he runs right away and shows Zelly the hiding place. She tells Aurora that wasn't very smart to keep the location a secret, but that Aurora wasn't always the brightest person. Zelly says she's going to think of a punishment for Aurora later, and as Aurora hangs her head in utter dread, and while Zelly and Co. are still looking over the secret place, Aurora slams a big heavy metal door shut, locking it for good. Aurora runs off as the giant comes home and we see the secret location was a wood oven stove. The giant starts the stove to start dinner, and that is the final end of Zelly and Co. With Zelly finally gone, it seems like Aurora can finally relax. She sits in a cuckoo clock and watches the giant, saying that she'll have to rebuild the nest, but it's okay because she has plenty of time. She then remarks that the food that the giant is making for them smells amazing and calls him her sweet prince. And that is the story of Beautiful Darkness. There are a lot of theories to this graphic novel, like the little people representing the dead child's mentalities, like some kind of twisted version of Inside Out. There's theories like who represents what, like Aurora representing the child's youth and Jane representing who the child would become. Is the feral child that can't let the corpse go some form of death or primal emotion that death brings on just before we pass? Why is everyone so callous and cold to each other? Is it because children are at such a young age that their minds haven't developed the skills yet to process anyone else's pain but their own? What was the nightmare about that the feral child had? How did the girl die? Did the giant kill her? This story has elements that make you think it's a satire on society and trying to survive it. The thing about this story though is that while some of these theories fit almost perfectly, we aren't 100% certain. Like the piece of a puzzle or an answer to a question you are so sure about, but you keep finding yourself looking back at. Yeah, this piece fits and it looks right, but there are all these other pieces that almost line up identical as well. To me, the whole story gives off a level of uncertainty. I'm pretty sure Aurora is the little girl, but I'm not certain. Some settings it feels like days go by, but it could just as easily be minutes. The giant most likely killed the dead girl, but she could have triggered one of his hunting traps, and that's why her body's left untouched. He doesn't even know she's there. We don't know. Sure, there's plenty of deep, dark themes and theories, but each one branches off into a different direction, like getting lost in a forest. To me, this story feels like a fading memory. The visuals are all there, but the details are just a bit unclear. What makes all this even more uncertain is apparently the authors of the book haven't even answered what all of this means either. The story is pretty much up in the air for you to interpret it how you see fit. Who are these little people? How did the girl die? Who is the giant man? Why does Aurora find his scent pleasant and Jane finds it repulsive? That's all really up for you to decide. Also, if I had to guess, the giant man didn't kill the child Aurora, but maybe he smells like bait he sets up for his prey. Little Aurora was playing in the woods and was drawn to it, and she was killed by a trap or maybe poison bait. That's why Aurora is drawn to the scent, but the grown-up observant Jane is repulsed by the smell. I would even say Jane hates the giant and the smell because they essentially end Jane/Aurora's life and Jane never got to be or exist. But of course, that's just my interpretation of the book. What's yours? Thank you so much for watching this. If you did and would like to leave a like, that would be greatly appreciated. I love this book and how mysterious everything about it is, but man oh man, is it an emotional gut punch. But you know it's a good story when even after the story makes you feel at an all-time low, you still continue on, cause it's just that darn good. Anyway, that is it for now, and I will see you all next time. Bye. Hey there everyone, my name is Tony, and this is now merch. I now have a TeePublic store. This includes merch for the channel as well as other designs that pop into my head. I just love to create, honestly. So if you want to support this channel and pick up an odd looking graphic tee, head over to TeePublic. My store name is Bad Apple Juice, all one word. I'll also be leaving a link in the description of this video, and see you all next time.